Welcome back to our YouTube channel, ladies and gentlemen. For more than 1 million times, we have maintained that President William Samoei Ruto had the support of the United States of America and almost 3/4 of the entire European countries. Many doubt what we are saying, but the more days go by, revelations are coming up and people accept this fact that William Ruto is the last born of the American country in Africa. This discussion is very viable because we are sitting at crossroads in Africa and in Kenya as we speak. There is a conversation going on immediately after the government killed very many Azimio supporters on the streets, and people are talking, both the government and the opposition. As they engage in their talks, people have got expectations of the outcome of this meeting. But if there is one thing that will not be achieved in these meetings, is electoral justice. That will not be achieved in these meetings. And I'm telling you this because the USA is hell-bent on ensuring that William Ruto succeeds in the mission that they signed together with the USA. You wonder why when people were being butchered, the USA was very quiet. But then when there are talks going on, they would hurriedly send the US Senator, the Delaware Senator Chris Coons. Today, Meg Whitman, who is the US Ambassador to Kenya, revealed why they have always been quiet when people are fighting on the streets, when the government is targeting Raila with 10 bullets, when Azimio supporters are being beaten here and there, they are being killed, when one community is being targeted, when Azimio leaders are being apprehended, abducted, and being intimidated in their own soil. Because according to the footage I'm about to give you, the USA believes that the last election was free, fair, and verifiable. In fact, according to her, this is the most free, if that is English. She said the freest election that we've ever held in the history of Kenya. While we know that the best election that we ever held was that in 2002. Just listen to Meg Whitman.
Now that's how I'm talking about Africa to US businesses. Let's zoom in on how I'm talking about why Kenya should be everyone's destination in Africa. Kenya is the most stable democracy in Africa. Kenya generates, as I said, over 93% of its energy from renewable sources, and Kenya's largest export market is the United States. Let me repeat, Kenya's largest export is the United States, and we feel Kenya is ready for liftoff as it diversifies. Let me unpack a couple of these areas. Democracy. I arrived in Kenya days before the August 22 general elections. What I witnessed was nothing short of remarkable. Kenya held what many analysts and commentators say was the freest, fairest, and most credible election in Kenyan history. The elections were observed by international and local election organizations, and the results were upheld by the Kenyan Supreme Court, and power was transferred orderly and peacefully at the time.
I know these statements will really vex the Azimio supporters, but those who are supporting William Ruto will be over the moon with joy. Let me tell you something. Meg Whitman, number one, knew where she was talking. They were in a devolution conference in Eldoret, was in Gishu. That is the home county of President William Samoei Ruto. And I get perturbed when Meg Whitman can stand in the public and tell the whole world that Kenya is the hub of democracy. I don't know their definition of democracy. And this is the reason why I always maintain that the USA will always come here under the guise of champions of democracy. Yet their democracy is one that is one-sided, as long as the person they protect will always also protect their interest. When people are killed on the streets for going on demonstrations in accordance with the dictates of the Constitution, because our Katiba allows freedom of picketing, allows the freedom of demonstration, as long as it is peaceable and free of carrying weapons. I expected the USA to issue a statement. I expected Meg Whitman at least to caution William Ruto against using brutal force against those who are being killed on the streets. They were quiet. And now she's confirming that in the midst of all that happened, when people are being killed and maimed, when she witnessed the Azimio parade bodies of dead people with police bullets and parents mourning and dark clouds hanging in Nyanza, according to the USA, because an ambassador of a country will only speak that which is the general view of their country. So according to the USA, Joe Biden and the entire USA administration and that regime, they believe Kenya is the most democratic country, despite the fact that people are being beaten and killed when they demonstrate. According to them, this regime is the most legit in Africa. Number two, despite the fact that the Azimio has always called for the opening and scrutiny of the server, something that they don't want to hear, they believe we conducted a free and the most verifiable election. And I've always told you that USA knows their role. Meg Whitman confesses that she came just about a few months, I think, into our election. And one might wonder, how did she play any role when she was just new? These are matters policy. An outgoing ambassador will always write down and give you the history and the interest. When the new ambassador is coming, there is already an instruction. We want Ruto to come in. We don't want Raila Odinga. You will do anything to ensure that William Ruto becomes the president. And so she played a very important role. She pitched camp at Bomas, something that we have never witnessed before. Diplomats will always wait for an invitation on the day when the body that is mandated to manage an election will invite them for the declaration of the president-elect, of the results. But Meg Whitman pitched camp during counting and verification. And you wonder, what exactly was she doing? Now you know. There's a very simple question. Why can't we open the server? And they will jump in and tell you that during the Supreme Court, a server was opened. That was an IEBC portal that Wafula Chebukati would key in whatever he wants. So I want us to understand that whatever was open was not the server. Our country has been subdued and we are living under the mercy of the West. I will repeat again that when the USA wants you to accept LGBTQ, it will be accepted. And if you refuse, IMF and World Bank will not give you loans. No wonder the LGBTQ fraternity in the country has got the freedom of association, according to the Supreme Court ruling. No wonder William Ruto wants us to consume GMO without having a public conversation about it. No wonder the West have dictated that we must increase VAT on fuel, and we must abandon all the subsidies. Someone was telling me that even the subsidy that has been reduced on fuel, that is just for a moment because the talks are going on. With what is going on here, my concern is just one. As long as things remain the way they are, the USA, the Supreme Court is still intact, headed by Madam Hot Air. We are headed nowhere. In fact, I dare say 2027 election, I don't know whether it will achieve or yield anything. Because William Ruto has everything. There is no democracy in Kenya. In fact, we are pretend that we are an autonomous country. There is no independence. We depend on the West. Just the other day, when African heads of states met, is it St. Andrews in Russia, for that Russia-African summit, William Ruto never attended. Neither did he send any representative. And while he was there, he was busy speaking about the peace in our neighborhood. And the US Secretary of State Blinken commended him. A few days later, Kenyan government was warning Russia for hosting those who they consider to have toppled legitimate governments. The relationship between Kenya and USA is one that is cordial. For those who think that when William Ruto talks about dollar, for those who feel that when he hosted the Iranian president that is now moving to the east, William Ruto can never move to the east. He will speak everything and Africans will clap for him. William Ruto values the dollar. William Ruto values USA and UK. He can never switch to the east because this has been proved. If this is the environment that Meg Whitman considers to be very democratic, if that is the kind of election that she considers to be the most democratic in the history of our nation, then she has not read the history. Otherwise, she would have known that the 2002 election was the best and the most democratic because it was what we call a revolution from the Nyayo era. I wonder whether we shall remain independent. Whatever we gained in 1964, 1963-64, I don't know. That was not democracy. It was not independent because we are being controlled. The button is being switched from Washington, D.C. And this is a very bad news because as people sit down to talk, I wonder whether there is going to be anything, because if this is the position of the USA, then they are going to dictate watapanga azimio. And that tells you why William Ruto is unmoved. Anajua mali amekanyaga. They have the ICC. You saw the other day, the prosecutor came here and the Inspector General started speaking. You know, Azimio is hiring bodies. So, William Ruto has everything. ICC, the police, the Supreme Court, IEBC, USA, name it. Kenyans are living under the mercies of our God. No wonder Raila says that we cannot sit and watch, because if they are left, this country will be sold and we shall remain aliens in our own country.